Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name's Cameron, and today we've got another episode of Scotch Sunday. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the Hazelburn 15-year 2023 release, coming in at 55.8% ABV. This was distilled in June 2008 and bottled September 2023. The label states Oloroso cask matured, and the number of bottles in this release being 9,000. I believe the price point on this one, if you find it at SRP, is right around $170-ish US. And because we are talking Hazelburn, that is triple distilled, unpeated Springbank. And I've got to be honest with you, this is a distillery profile, distillery in general, that I'm not super familiar with. I think over the last few years, I may have tasted one or two products at most from Hazelburn. They would have been samples sent in from folks because, again, this is the first bottle of Hazelburn I've ever picked up. I found this bottle on secondary for a very reasonable $215, which included shipping, so a very, very small upcharge compared to that SRP. And you can see I've already done some damage on this. I've already sampled it out to a lot of folks, and I'm excited for today's review. So hit that like button, drop me a comment if you've tried this. And before we get into the tasting, I do want to just quickly acknowledge all of the folks who have been tuning into these Scotch Sunday reviews. Number one, thank you. I really appreciate it. I think we have a pretty wide audience now for these videos. A lot of folks, I feel like, are purely into Scotch, found the channel through Scotch Sunday, and that's very, very cool. And I think there are some other folks who know me from the American whiskey side of things, and maybe they as well are Scotch lovers, or at least dipping their toes in, and they're finding some value in this series. As many of you have noted in the comment section, I am kind of learning as we go with this series. I mean, I started with Scotch many years ago, and I fell away from it as the channel picked up, and I started doing more American whiskey content. So in some ways, I'm relearning how to taste Scotch, and things are jogging my memory, but there's also just a lot of new stuff that I'm getting out of this as well. And I think it's kind of a fun thing as a community. I love reading your notes in these Scotch Sunday reviews, and I think Scotch drinkers and enthusiasts are a little, maybe in some ways, nerdier than American whiskey drinkers and enthusiasts, and that shows in the comment section. And I say that with love, being a part of this as well. So thank you for continuing to tune in, and I want you to know that I've taken your advice, and I have a second glass over here that has already been given a little bit of water to kind of open up some different flavors and see how this changes this particular whiskey. We're going to start obviously sipping this straight out of the bottle, neat cask strength. Then we'll move on to this sample and kind of see how those things differ. But again, thank you for being here. Cheers, guys. And let's see what this Hazelburn 15-year is like on the nose. Okay, so this is a humongously sherried whiskey, first and foremost. And you would expect that given the color, just given what the label says, Oloroso cask matured. But not only do you get hit with a lot of these dense, sticky, sherried fruit notes, and we're obviously talking kind of dry, dark red fruits, a little bit of this raisin profile as well. But there's an aggression to the front of the nose on this. It's a little bit pointed, and the way that comes off actually is with a distinct salty note. That's kind of to be expected when you're looking at the Springbank family of whiskeys, right? You get kind of that coastal influence, that salt, salinity, sea air, ocean spray, however you want to refer to it. But this one, I mean, very salty on the front end, and I like it because, yes, it has some spice to it. It has those kind of spice notes you would expect from sherry casks. But I think the fun part of the whiskey on the front of the nose is this saltiness. Yeah. Beautiful salt, and I would say it's almost a little bit of like a salted caramel, salted toffee, humongous toffee notes jumping out of the glass as well. You do get some dark chocolate on here, and of course that's coming from those sherry casks. It's kind of on the edge of coffee, but I would still say that this is maybe a little bit more of a baker's chocolate kind of note. There's also in here kind of this mossy, earthy, forest floor damp note to the oak. And I find that not only on older scotches, of course, when you start getting more of that oak influence, but when you have older sherry finished scotches, and when you have a distillery like a Hazelburn, like a Springbank, like a Longrow, these kinds of distilleries, they're using presumably quality casks. I find that you get more of this kind of earthy oak note to it. So there's this like damp leather, damp mossy, again, I'm going to say forest floor, and it's just a great kind of yeah, combination of earthy, salty, dark fruit, dry fruit, sweetness. Also, some fresh sherry is in there as well. It's not all dark and heavy. It really runs the gamut, but I still am obsessed with this salt note on the front of the nose. I can't get over that. So let's go to the palate now. Cheers. Wow. It's a powerful, powerful whiskey. The first thing I'm hit with is actually not spice. It's a big delivery at the front of the palate of those sherried fruits, that sweet, dark, sticky, slightly bitter, a decently tannic profile also, I have to say, on the front of the palate. And then once the whiskey begins to develop and roll back, I would say on the middle of the tongue, mid-palate is where you actually start to get a lot of the spice notes. I think it's an interesting development for a whiskey. It kind of delays the ramping up and the spiciness of the whiskey so that it arrives with more of just those broad is maybe the best word to put it, broad sherry notes on the front. So absolutely delicious. It is sort of a drier whiskey. And I think at this proof, with that kind of salty profile that it has, the dryness, of course, the heavy sherry cask influence, it makes sense to me. It's not off-putting. But I think this is where, tasting this whiskey, nosing this whiskey as well with a little bit of water in it is going to be interesting to see if it makes it feel a little more fresh and slightly less dry, particularly on the finish. But let's go back in now for the nose here on this, on this cask strength version. Yeah, I would say two things are now jumping out of the glass a little bit more as my palate and my nose have kind of acclimated to the whiskey. One, I am getting kind of like a cake note, which is nice. I do get this on some sherried scotches. Typically, I would say that when I get this cake note, and I really am talking about a white cake profile, I usually find that on a mixture of ex-bourbon, ex-sherry cask. Sometimes that will really jump out. Macallan, for better or worse, the 12-year double cask has some of that. But here I do get this white cake, and I think the chocolate note is becoming even more pronounced after the first sip. All right, let's go back in now. Cheers. My God. So I don't think I've quite said this yet. And I think it's because I've tasted this whiskey so much already. And in some ways, it's kind of a given in my head, but it's not. I haven't stated it out loud, and that is that this is an unbelievably good whiskey, okay? So I'm sorry that on my first sip I didn't react like this. I was more in the analytical mindset there. But I've already tasted this on a live stream before, and this is one of my favorite scotches I've had in quite a long time. The fact that the price point is so good for what it is, at 15 years old, means it still has some vibrant elements. It's not too tired, 1821, and not that it's a guarantee that those would be too tired, but this one, again, retains that liveliness. I get giddy every time I drink this scotch, so I just want to say that, and I'm sorry for the delay in the video of calling that out. I am getting kind of a, what do I want to say here? There's a sourness to this, and it's coming off to me as kind of like some fruit skins, skin notes from like an apple or a pear. There's this bite, this little sour bite on the palate. Just an incredible whiskey. I've got to say, the drinking experience, there's something new every time, whether it's the fruit coming out a little bit more, the saltiness, some of that sour note now, especially on the second sip. I get that sour element coming through more. It's just phenomenal stuff. So now we're going to move over to this, which I poured the exact same amount in both glasses before the video started, and this has essentially one cap full of, like a little plastic water bottle. It has one cap full of water in here. That's the loosest measurement ever, and I don't have an exact measurement. Maybe in the future we'll do a strict 3 milliliters. I have no idea, but let's check this out now on the nose and see what this watered down version is like. Okay, so the watered down version actually is bringing out some more like golden raisin notes. Everything feels a bit more this is going to sound silly, but a bit more golden. All of the flavor notes. It's obviously tamed down the humongous sherry impact and that dryness that I was getting. Not quite on the nose anymore. It's sweetened up. There's more of a vanilla note here. Again, golden raisin, which is more of a refill sherry cask note, whereas I feel like when I have this at proof, more of kind of like that first fill sherry impression, comes to play. And I don't know exactly what the cask, what the diversity of casks was like in this blend. I would imagine there was a pretty decent mixture. Perhaps it's all first fill. If you know in the comment section, let me know. But at proof, it feels more first fill. And with the water, it's definitely feeling more of like that second fill golden raisin type thing. All right, let's just try it. Let's get this on the palate now. Cheers. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I don't typically add a lot of water to my whiskeys, but I think you guys are right. I think we need to start doing this in every video. That's actually remarkable how much that brought these flavors together. Whereas on the initial, the initial glass that I was tasting, it felt like I could really pick out some of these notes. The saltiness at the front, the dry sherry. As we went along, this is so much more integrated. And actually, it's not such a lower proof that I feel like I'm missing out on the experience of drinking it. It's remarkable how much this has brought together all of those notes, like the sweet and sour, almost Aberlour kind of profile, which I get on the 18-year. Of course, that's a very gentle whiskey, but there's a sweet and sourness to that Aberlour stuff that now that kind of an element is coming through on this Hazelburn 15 with some water. Yeah, pretty remarkable. All right, we got to do one more sip of this. I think that's right. There's a little more tropical fruit, almost like caramel drizzled tropical fruit notes coming through. Kind of this sweet sour ginger / pear kind of thing that's playing off of one another. It's removed a lot of the intensity and the harshness. I definitely don't get as much of that sea air, salt, salinity, that kind of thing. That has really, really been tamed down, if not completely gone for me. And now that we're in the finish, yeah, this retains freshness and it doesn't get nearly as dry. So this is definitely one to explore with water, I think. I'm glad I did. I'm glad everybody suggested it and was emphatic about it in the comment section of the last video. We are going to start using more water for these reviews, but I cannot say it any more emphatically. I recommend this Hazelburn 15 so much. If you find it at SRP, I say buy 3 of these. I mean, it's really that good. And secondary at $215, how I found it, I mean, that price doesn't even offend me one bit. I know it's secondary. People don't like to buy that way, but the quality of whiskey you're getting here is pretty darn remarkable, and I would love to hear what you guys think. So drop a comment in the comment section below if you've tried this. This is the only Hazelburn 15 that I've ever tried. I'm not, again, too familiar with this distillery profile, but I like it. And I love big sherry cask whiskeys like this, and this was no exception. An absolutely remarkable Scotch here. So cheers, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, check out the Patreon, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.